Now it is my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce to you the moderator for today's lunch panel, Major General James Spider Marks. He is the president of the Marks Collaborative, an advisory firm dedicated to the development and transformation of corporate leaders and their organizations. Since retiring from the military, where he attained the rank of Major General, General Marks has continued his engagement in national security as an on-air military and intelligence contributor to CNN, and as a keynote speaker and author addressing our dynamic geopolitical environment. In addition to his corporate leadership development enterprise, Marks has led many business ventures to include entrepreneurial efforts in education, energy, and primary research. He served as a president and CEO of Global Linguist Solutions, a private company that provided linguistic services to the U.S. military in Iraq, and was the largest employer of native Iraqis. Not too many people can say that, I'm sure. He was the executive dean, University of Phoenix, and served as a principal military advisor to its president. He is an adjunct professor at Georgetown University and sits on several boards, including Academy Securities in the Activision Blizzard Call of Duty Endowment. General Marks is a member of the Military Intelligence Hall of Fame. He is a graduate of West Point and has a Master of Arts degree in Foreign Affairs from the University of Virginia. And without further ado, I would like to welcome General Marks to the stage. General Marks.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Everybody doing good, as they say? I was trained early on by a non-commissioned officer who said, hey, listen up, sir. The soldier's first duty is to remember. To remember. So we remember this weekend all of our veterans and all our veterans in the crowd and all of our incredible employers and business owners and the great state of Arizona, the wonderful city of Phoenix, the Valley. We thank you as veterans for all that you do for us, and collectively we can move the ball down the field. So to all of you, thank you very, very much. I'd be remiss if I didn't say happy birthday, Marine Corps. 242nd birthday, hoorah. It's a great story. You may not know it, Marines do. You were born in a tavern in Philadelphia. A bunch of drunks got around and said, we're going to solve this problem here. And they created the Marine Corps, and it has grown up and grown into one of the most incredible fighting forces in the world, and they routinely sleep soundly at night, folks. Sleep soundly at night, because Marines visit harm on our enemies around the globe, and you should be thankful for that. You're right. Very, very tough to follow Senator McCain. You know, when I was a kid, my mom said, hey, listen up, young man, never follow Pavarotti. I'm following Pavarotti. That's tough to do. I've been married 40 years, all in a row. Same woman. And before I left the other day to come out here, I was going through the closet. I was packing up my stuff. And I don't know about you guys. I have all girls. So in my world, in my house, I own nothing but a little cubby where I'm allowed to hang stuff up. And I have some boxes that I'm allowed to kind of keep in my own little cubby. And I grew up as a military kid, and we moved every 2 years. And my mom, again, very gracious woman, she said, hey, look, guys, we'll get the house settled ASAP, but you can keep some boxes packed, because the second we get them unpacked, you're going to be packing them back up. So if you got a few boxes, you can keep those packed. Got it. So I kind of continued that tradition of my family, and I subjected my kids to all this. So even I have some boxes that are still packed today, and I've been retired from the military for a while, but I still got my little boxes. So I'm going through one of those boxes the other day. I hadn't seen this, and so I opened this box up, and I was very kind of surprised. I saw 3 eggs in this box, a little shoe box, 3 eggs, and I saw 2 rolls of $100 bills and $10 bills with rubber band around it. Completely perplexed, had never seen that before, and so I went to Marty and I said, sweetheart, what's with this box here? And she said, oh yeah, I know that box. And I said, wait a minute, sweetheart, what do you mean? What's what's with these, what's with these eggs? And she goes, well, look, you've given a lot of public addresses. You've spoken to soldiers all your life. You've spoken to their families. You've done this a bunch, thousands of times, and every time you gave a lousy presentation, I put an egg in the box. Now, I'm not feeling too bad. Thousands of times, 3 eggs, I'm going to Canton. You know, this is Hall of Fame stuff. And I said, but sweetheart, I'm still a little bit concerned. What's with all the money? And she said, oh, every time I got a dozen, I sold them. So I hope not to lay an egg, but I've got to tell you, the panelists that we have with us today are going to not only surprise but inspire and make you want to lean forward just a little bit more. Their lives of service are phenomenal. So let me introduce our first panelist, who you all know very, very well, but I need to spend some time talking about him just because it kind of brings a tear to your eye. Each one of these, when you think about it, you take a step back and you go, my goodness, you never really give up, you know? You don't want to rust out, you want to wear out, and these guys are making sure that they wear out because they are leaning forward every day, moving out, trying to make it better for those around them, which is the definition of selfless and wonderful life. Ed Robeson. Ed Robeson is the founder and chairman of Robeson Communities. He is a true American icon, regarded as one of the nation's most successful, active adult community developers. Mr. Robeson was a star hockey player, which you may not know, All-American, and after he graduated from college, he was selected to play for Team USA. He also served, get this, he also served while he's doing that 5 years in the United States Marine Corps, departing service honorably as a captain. So, Ed, happy birthday to the Marine Corps to you, sir. Mr. Robeson began his real estate career with Coldwell Banker in the early 60s, and in 1972 he started his first active adult community, Sun Lakes. This project sold approximately 10,000 homes, and today more than 50,000 people call a Robeson resort community home, with locations in Phoenix, Tucson, and in the Dallas Metroplex area. But he's generous with his time, and he's been recognized for that. He's been named the Entrepreneur of the Year from Arizona State, and he has a Doctor of Humane Letters from Colorado College. Now, my only question about that is I've never heard of anybody with a Doctor of Inhumane Letters, so I'm just, by comparison, I'm not sure, but a Doctor of Humane Letters. He also, again, generous with his own growth within his companies, contributing to the American Heart Association, the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation, the Wounded Warrior Project, and the Phoenix Boys and Girls Club. He has contributed millions of dollars to educational institutions such as Colorado College and Arizona State. Ed, thank you, sir. You're a welcome example. You're a wonderful example for all of us in terms of leadership and selflessness. Mr. Jason Rowley. He's in his 6th season as the Suns president and his 11th season overall with the team. He has served previously as the chief operating officer as well as its senior vice president and general counsel. Mr. Rowley earned his bachelor's degree in 1994 from the University of Arizona, and after graduation, he joined the United States Navy, an experience he considers and would proclaim with no hesitance one of the proudest and most formative periods in his life. He worked as an intelligence analyst with the commander of the 3rd Fleet Intelligence Division until his honorable discharge in 1998. He then returned to the University of Arizona and was awarded his law degree, graduating in 2001. Now that's a service that we can all relate to. Mr. Rowley is involved in a number of charitable and civic organizations. He serves on the Greater Phoenix Leadership, the ASU Walter Cronkite School of Journalism Endowment Board, the Thunderbirds, the Board of Phoenix Suns Charities, the Board of Downtown Phoenix. He's also served as the 2015 American Heart Association Phoenix Heart Walk Chairman and was named the 2011 Phoenix Father of the Year by the Phoenix Father Day Council. That's wonderful. Jason, thank you so much. We appreciate your service. Mr. Paul Smiley. Paul is the founder and president of Sonoran Technology, a professional services located in Goodyear. Since starting Sonoran Technology in 2007, he has successfully led the company through our nation's worst recession since 1932. That's called persistence, grit, and focus. Mr. Smiley was the Small Business Association 2016 Small Business Person of the Year and one of the Phoenix Business Journal's 2017 Most Admired Leaders. Now I want you to listen to this. Sonoran Technology employs over 300 employees, 84% of which are veterans. Colonel Smiley is a combat veteran of Desert Storm. Thank you, Paul, for your service. You're a wonderful example. We're glad to have you here. And Mr. Luke Larson. Luke is the president of Axon and is responsible for leading the company's day-to-day operations and overseeing all aspects of the company and its growth. Luke joined Axon in 2008 and has filled a variety of executive and management roles, becoming its president in April 2015. Prior to joining Axon, Luke served 2 tours in Iraq in the Marine Corps as an infantry officer. And so you do the math on when he was in Iraq, those were the most difficult days of our fight. Luke was up front. He was awarded, for his service, he was awarded the Bronze Star for Valor and on that very first tour. Luke graduated from the University of Arizona with a Navy ROTC scholarship. I guess that means he didn't compete for an Army ROTC scholarship. And he has an MBA from Thunderbird. Thank you, Luke. When you were needed, you were there. Thank you very much. So folks, what I'd like to do is we'd like to have a conversation. So there are no rules to this conversation. If you all have questions you'd like to ask, that's fine. I think somebody told me that there would be no questions from the audience, and I'm clearly going to disobey that order. But if you have questions, we'd like you, and we'll figure out whether it works for the sound, but don't worry about it. Don't be limited by that. Don't self-negotiate. But if you have questions, please share them. But I'd like to start the conversation clearly. Ed, let me ask you a question, if I can. And I think inarguably, this is the best military that we've ever had in our U.S. history. Now, clearly, we had the greatest generation that inarguably saved the world in World War II. When you compare their magnificent service and how they trained my generation, because those were my fathers, those were my mentors, and I look at the service, the military that I was proud to serve in, and the military that we have today, I can state unequivocally that this is the best trained, best educated, most incredible military I've ever seen. With immense technical savvy and creativity and real problems that they've been trying to solve at multiple stages of their careers over the past 16 years. So Ed, when you look back on your career, your development as a young man, your leadership growth, and then you fast forward and you see what's happening today, are there a couple of things that stand out that you would say are similar or that might really be different from your experience as a young leader and your world growth and your contributions?
Thank you, General. The question, and looking back on my career, I would do it all over again, and I'm talking about joining the Marine Corps. For me, the Marine Corps was like graduate school. I was spending too much time in college trying to stay eligible for sports and not enough time studying. I don't know how many of you fall into that category, but it's, I regret that part of it. But the Marine Corps, this is a solemn day for the Marine Corps, being our birthday today, and it means a lot to most Marines. And as I say again, I still keep in touch with a lot of folks from my squadron. That type of companionship and fraternity is something that I cherish. And I talked to a Marine the other day, and he said, you know, he was about 80 years old. He said, I'm trying to get back in. Well, I think I'm past that. If they had me get in one of the helicopters I used to fly, I told someone the other day I wouldn't know how to start it. Probably wouldn't know how to fly it either. But anyways, I don't know whether I answered your question, but
you did. Of course you did.
Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But anyways, it's good to see all of you, and go ahead.
Thanks, Ed. Luke is the other Marine on your birthday. Can you please, and generationally, leading those young men and women in combat at the junior level, if you can please comment.
I love the Marine Corps. My phone started blowing up last night with happy birthday, happy birthday. It was pretty awesome. Last year I was actually in line at Starbucks over in Scottsdale, and I had my Marine pin on, and the barista looks over and must have been a Marine or had a family member in the Marine, and she goes, happy birthday. And you know, my heart just swelled up that somebody else was recognizing the Marine Corps birthday. The guy behind me reaches over and he says, today's your birthday, happy birthday. And I look, it's Michael Phelps, the swimmer. And you know, so I explained to Michael Phelps, well, it's actually not my birthday, it's the Marine Corps' birthday, and this is something that everyone cherishes. And you know, he shook my hand, he said, thank you for your service. And the Marine Corps birthday is something that's really special for Marines, as well as Veterans Day for all the veterans. So thank you to all the veterans, and happy birthday to all the Marines.
That's great, Luke. That's right. Semper Fi is correct. Jason, let me ask you a question. We are now, I would say, my view of where we are, we've been at war for 16 years, and folks, we are in a continuous state of conflict. You know, it's intergenerational. Where we had our Cold War, and we were always under the specter of something called mutual assured destruction in the Soviet Union and how we had to balance all that out. It's not dissimilar today. The stakes are no less high. We are in a continual state of conflict, and we will have young men and women stepping up and going to combat, not necessarily in large numbers, but they could. But your sons and daughters, my grandchildren, are going to be involved in this fight going forward. So having said that, we also see that the military is getting smaller, although we're spending more money, and that's to replace equipment and ships and to ensure the maintenance of our aircraft, and that our infantrymen have the very, very best that our nation can provide. So Jason, from your experience with all those dynamics, a military getting smaller, yet we're going to continue to engage, how do you see, how do you see that landscape? Are we going to have a hard time bringing young men and women in? Or are we going to have a hard time continuing to educate them and get them to sign back up? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, General, and thanks for having me out today. Obviously, the veterans in the service to me is a very, very near and dear to my heart. I do very much agree with you. It's certainly different than, say, at the end of World War II, where there was a definitive end to conflict that the entire nation and world could celebrate. This is an entirely different world where conflict is perpetual. There doesn't seem to be an end in sight because it's an enemy that you are essentially trying to, first of all, identify to a certain degree, and there's no defined battlefield per se. I mean, obviously there are distinct battlefields, but in terms of it being so much more widespread and even coming onto our own shores, which is something that we simply didn't see before 9/11 in any kind of large degree. So I think there is a difficulty in trying to convince or attract individuals to go into the military to some degree. I think that as long as everybody in this room and the individuals who have served before, try and make the effort to describe to younger individuals what that experience meant, in terms of how it helped us develop into the men and women that we are today, I think that's a good lesson. I look across our organization, and we do have veterans in our organization, but you kind of, as the years go on, you have less and less that have that military experience, and I candidly look for it in applicants for jobs, because I know that even if a certain skill set or experience isn't there that is specific to a job, the fact of the matter is the dedication, the loyalty, the work ethic, the learning how to work as a team, no matter what your background is, no matter what your differences might be, you have to come to bear on whatever the task is at hand. And the military really teaches you that you have to set your differences aside and focus on the objective. And so finding individuals who have that background and that mindset can, in my view, really overcome any deficiencies they might have in whether it be education or whether it be the experience relative to a specific job. You can teach them the specifics of a job. Some of those innate qualities that you get from many, many people coming out of the military, there's really no other place to get that.
So that's a statement for everybody in the room as a business person, and you people get it. So it's not the folks in this room, it's those that are not in this room that hire a vet. When you hire a vet, you're hiring a best athlete. I may not have the specific position determined where that young lady is going to play, but I want her on my team. I want her either punting, I want her tackling, or I want her doing something. We'll get the best athletes on the team. Paul, let me ask you this. Air Force, career, commander at multiple levels, combat veteran. The world is amazingly chaotic. We don't know where the next fight's going to occur. I mean, who could honestly put your finger on the map 2 weeks ago and say, I know where Niger is located? And we just lost 4 great patriots in Niger. That's what our service does. In over 140 countries around the globe, 24/7, your military is out there carrying a rucksack, providing services. The service of all the services, the service that can close with those locations in the world most quickly is the United States Air Force. Can you give us a sense of how that's going to that dynamic might shape the Air Force, what type skill sets would be required, and again, for this audience, those great young men and women coming back looking for employment post-service to nation, how that might tie together?
Among all the Marines, bravo, Air Force.
Thank you, sir.
Ugh.
We train F-16 pilots at Luke Air Force Base and the Holloman Air Force Base. And 5-6 years ago, we would graduate that young fighter pilot, and he or she would deploy to Osan Air Force Base or Kunsan Air Force Base, and they will probably drop their first bomb a year later. Today, at Holloman Air Force Base, we are training F-16 pilots who are leaving the schoolhouse and dropping bombs on the enemy 60 days later. You can't fast forward experience, but we have to in this particular case. In Desert Storm, we would take 4 F-16s to support a close air support mission for the Army and Marines, and have 4 F-16 pilots loaded to bear with bombs to support the Marine Corps and the Army. The adage at that time was kill and survive. We don't have that force anymore. Now it is survive and kill. We're sending 1 pilot loaded to bear to do the same mission that 4 pilots did back in Desert Storm. So when you look at how things have changed in the fighter world, during Desert Storm we had 135 fighter squadrons. Today we have 55. The whole thing with do more with less is almost unattainable. But what I say, in my company, we want to capture that skill set. I'm an AWACS guy, big rotor-on frisbee plane. So we train F-16 pilots, we train B-52 pilots, B-1 pilots, AWACS crews, RC-135 crews, and we need to recapture that skill set before they walk out the door. Once you take off the uniform, in your heart, I still bleed blue. We have to. And that's what's made our company a good company, because our employees understand that although they're retired or separated, they're still in the fight to defend this nation.
Yep. Thank you. Ed, let me circle back to you if I can. You've got the the broad arc of experiences that you've had in life, and your success is absolutely enviable, admirable. veteran unemployment, we're tackling veteran unemployment pretty well. But we still have a challenge. On the national average of unemployment is going down, but the veterans are still above the national average, which in my mind, and we all would agree, is shameless. I mean, shameful. We should not allow that to happen. So with the enterprise that you command, can you give us some tips or ideas in terms of how you've addressed hiring veterans and seeking out veterans, things like HeroZona and other kinds of programs that might be very unique to you?
Well, as far as recruiting, we have about 1,700 people in the company. Labor for a company is extremely important, so we watch hiring. We have a lot of turnover in some parts of the business, but veterans do hold a special spot. I've got 3 other veterans that are longtime employees of the company. It was said earlier, a lot of times when you're trying to get a younger group with a lot more energy, many of them just haven't been in the service. And but I tried to check and who we hired in the last 6 months, and I think there was 1 veteran. Maybe we could do more, but that's important. I'm very sensitive to that, and that's why I'm here. AP's a close friend of mine, and he's very, very interested in veteran affairs, and because of that, I'm part of that, I guess. But the one thing that helped me, and I don't want to talk about myself, but what really helped me was early on, I think you do better if you grow up in a not so affluent home. You learn to, if you want any spending money, you learn how to get it, and that's cutting lawns, paper route, shoveling snow. I'm from Boston, so it's a little snow there. So with that behind you, you've got a little bit of a work ethic, and whatever you do, most of us in this room know, I'm sure, that that's where it all is. If you work, lucky things will happen.
Thank you, Ed. You know, General Franklin and I were having a conversation earlier today with AP, and we said, you know, the notion of veteran unemployment is in kind of top of mind for all of that. And, you know, generationally, is there a difference? And Ben Franklin said, well, yeah, after the young men and women came back from World War II, they went home, and guess what? They had grown up during the Depression. Not only had they been in combat, not only had they been shot at, in many cases shot at and hit, and they come back home, and if anybody starts complaining, you go, jump in the truck, get busy, shovel the snow. You know, you lived through the Depression. If you're going to, excuse me, if you're going to, never mind, if you're going to complain about something, go find somebody who cares, because we're not listening to you right now. Hey, Luke, can you tell us what you're doing, kind of playing off Ed's answer, what you guys are doing at Axon to kind of find vets?
Yeah, so my company is called Axon. We're most well known for the TASER device, the TASER electronic weapon. Our primary customer is law enforcement, and so in law enforcement you'll find a very similar sense of service and camaraderie to the military. And so we probably have over 5% of our workforce is veterans, which is, you know, something that we're proud of, but I think we can also improve. And we really look for people that want to do more. And so I think being a veteran is a good ticket into the admission. I will take a meeting with any veteran, certainly a Marine, but any veteran reaches out to me and I will take the meeting. In that meeting, I really try to give people the advice that I would have wanted in that situation. And that could be, hey, you're not quite ready for this role, you might need some more schooling. That could be, hey, you know, have you thought about it this way? And even if I don't have a job for that person, I try to give them the perspective that I would have wanted in that situation as well. And I think that's really what's special about the veteran community, because where I learned that behavior was from veterans that have given me that same break.
That's wonderful. Can I get all you guys to answer that question? I mean, it's so important because you're reaching in such uniquely distinct. Paul?
Sir, I would say a little exception. We can't assume that everyone who leaves the military wants to be an employee. There are some folks who want to be business owners. And that's the route I took. And here in Arizona, we have probably one of the best small business administration offices in the country. You got Jim Pipper. Where's Jim at? Jim Pipper, Mr. Blaney, Shivani Dubey. And those resources are there. So I think you can make a huge impact by being a business owner. Now, this is not for the faint-hearted. It's commitment. And it's 14 hours a day. And you will know when you're a business owner when you make payroll from your paycheck, from your pocket. But I would say, and I have to be very honest with this, NaVOBA can verify this, there are 20 states that have veteran procurement laws on the book. In 2003, President George Bush passed the Veterans Benefit Act, which says 3% of all federal contracts go to disabled veteran-owned small businesses. For the last 7 years in the state of Arizona, we have tried to get that passed, and we have failed. Our legislature for veteran-owned businesses, for tax procurement law, has failed us. Like the general said yesterday, we don't need a handout. We need a hand up. But getting 3% of the Arizona contracts set aside for veteran-owned businesses that are headquarters here would change the landscape of veterans wanting to stay here. That's the truth.
Yep.
You know, I think from our perspective, one of the things that we have that's pretty powerful is our brand. You know, the Phoenix Suns organization obviously has a long-standing position in this community, and being able to utilize that brand along with some of our great partners, like example, APS is one of our terrific partners. Tomorrow night we're doing our military appreciation night that they are our partners with on that. To me, being able to go out and spread the word across the community, using that brand and working with our partners to be able to develop some of these programs and promote some of these programs to allow other businesses, some other small businesses, to really kind of open their eyes and say, you know, it's not just about us and the people up here hiring, it's also about other companies across the state and the city and the state who might not be led by a veteran, might not have that experience to understand the types of skills that those individuals can bring to bear. I think that if we can collectively work across our network to help raise awareness and education about the positive qualities that those individuals will bring to the workforce, I think that's really probably the most powerful thing we can do as a community.
That's, you know, I was going to say, if I can play off that, and Paul, let me go back to you then. Do you, very simply, do you hire on character or do you hire on competence?
We hire on attitude.
So character.
Yeah, I can't train attitude.
Right.
And I would tell you today in the marketplace, and some business owners may understand this, people are getting terminated for behavior and not performance. Because I can't train attitude. So our company policy is really simple. You must be civil. I don't care how many degrees you have and how many awards you have to be civil. And then comes the competency and the experience. We have a 95% retention rate because our company is not about making money. We make money. But my policy is people before profit. And people understand that. Take care of the people, they would take care of the customer. And I think all of us on the stage who are NCOs and officers understand that. We are obliged and committed to take care of our troops first. And that's the philosophy I use as a leader of our company. I take care of my employees first.
Right. Yeah, please. That's great. Thanks, Paul. Luke, when you're looking to hire someone, do you give an additional set of eyes to that veteran resume?
If somebody comes in with a veteran's background, I think it's a bonus. If I had to be perfectly candid, and I think it's important for veterans to hear this, it's not enough though. You've got to bring something else to the table, and that is what I tell veterans when they get out. Sometimes there might be a false expectation. Hey, when I was in the Marines, I was a captain, or when I was in the Army, I was a sergeant, I was leading people. When you make that transition into the civilian workforce, it is a tough transition. I've never had, you know, it was one of the toughest transitions I ever had. And for me, I had to knock myself back a couple pegs and maybe take a lower role and figure out how do I communicate the value that I learned from the service? And I think that sometimes is a really, really hard but necessary message to give to young veterans is don't go out there with an expectation that if you had a group or a squad or something, you're going to have that same level of responsibility. It's on you to be able to articulate that and be able to work for it. And the people that I've seen that are veterans that have soared have gone in with that civil attitude and the idea that they're going to work to take the next step.
That's great. You know, all veterans would tell you that when they transition, they're looking for something that provides purpose. Purpose in life in uniform is unequivocal. Your brothers and sisters are right by your side 24/7, and I will not disappoint them. It's not about me, it's about them. And that's purpose in life. So they leave service and they're looking for a same type of purpose. 44% of our veterans are what we call underemployed. Underemployed. They got a job, but they don't have purpose. And they have a crappy paycheck. And it's kind of like they went for the first thing that was available. Mr. Robeson, let me ask you this. How would you then address the notion of really giving purpose to that new employee who's just hung up her uniform and is now showing up to work to lean forward for you?
I think you have to have a program or be able to give them advice to get some more training, to go back to school for a few semesters. We're not a nonprofit organization. We're a business for a reason. And we do hire. One of the things you were talking about, what prerequisites a hire needs to have, we look for energy. And that's probably a younger person. We've got probably almost 30 people that have been with the company over 30 years, an awful lot that have been with it 20 years. So I don't think it's because of my good management. Maybe I'm too easy. But anyways, I think that that you need to get some training and advice if you're able to. I don't know what the statistics are of people coming onto the market, and you're right about people want their own businesses. And that again comes back to, as I said earlier, work is the important part of it. Anything you go into, whether you're going to work for somebody or you're starting your own business. And you hear all these stories of people making, even selling a business they'd put together 4 years ago and they sell it for $20 million. And then you hear the other stories quite a bit more. But there's an awful lot of businesses that don't make it. But that comes back to the other theory is don't give up. And I think that's, get a little bit of training will help.
Yes, sir. I got it. We're kind of nearing the end. What I'd like to do, next couple of questions for everybody, if you would. Kind of, Jason and I were talking, this is kind of like jump ball time. Let's talk about Arizona. And Paul, you made a comment about the state and veterans, disabled veteran enterprises and just veteran-owned businesses. First question for any of you guys. Statistically, 75% of service members that get out of the service, that terminate service honorably, stay where they are. You know, the young soldier from Boston will stay at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I'm married, I have children, I'm going to stay here. I want to be a part of, I still want to try to maintain this brotherhood. And they find out that that's hard to do. The second you depart service, you're no longer in, you know, when you leave the team, you're not on the team. So what are some ideas that Arizona can do to keep those great young airmen from Luke, or the great young soldiers from Fort Huachuca, or the great National Guard? You know, what are some things, guys, just along the panel?
Well, oftentimes the veterans we talk to in the West Valley and Goodyear and Surprise, we live in a bubble for 20-some years, the base, the post. And the culture transition is different. When I retired in 2002, my daughter was about 12 years old. One of her friends come over to the house and said, "What's up, dude?" He goes, "Are you talking to me?" It was a culture shock. You can call me Mr. Smiley, you can call me Colonel Smiley, but you cannot call me dude. And so we need to help people make that transition. But instead of veterans, blindly looking for jobs, we need to be proactive, engage industry and ask industry, what jobs do you have available for veterans? And then push those jobs to veterans. I mean, you lived in this bubble for 20-some years. You have no idea what the outside world is like. The commissary is your safe place for shopping and saving money. And then you go into a local grocery store, like, wow, that's 5 times as much.
And I'm paying taxes.
And I'm paying taxes. So we need to take a more proactive industry approach to industry and approach industry and have them ask the question, what jobs? Someone on the panel yesterday made this comment. We have a lot of jobs for veterans. We have painters and custodians. Whoa, 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 whoa.
No.
We got young men at Luke Air Force Base working on F-35 and F-16, who are 20 years old. We're not the Air Force from the 60s or the Navy or Army from the 60s. We have very talented, skilled individuals in the military. A lot of our NCOs have degrees. So we need to make sure we are being proactive and ask industry, what do you need? And then answer their call versus veterans doing all the work themselves.
Got it. And can the state help in that
Absolutely.
endeavor, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one really big initiative that I like to recommend is the GI Bill. You take that veteran experience with an education, and that is a potent mix. And I think it helps with the transition as well. To go straight into the workforce is a pretty, hard turn. And so I really recommend, and I've just actually been blown away by how many people don't take advantage of that great program. And so I'd really find ways to promote it with the state schools, with the trade schools, where we can give them a leg up to encourage them to seek that education on the benefit.
Yep. Jason, any thoughts?
I'd echo that. I utilized the GI Bill for my law degree, so it was something that certainly helped me both with the transition back to civilian life, but then also obviously with the education that built the platform for my career. I will say that, the idea or the point that such a large percentage of individuals getting out of the military stay in whatever market they're in when they're getting out is not surprising. In the private force right now, we're seeing that just getting individuals to relocate from across the country for a job is difficult because of the heightened cost of relocating people. So that in and of itself can be a huge barrier for individuals just getting out of the military to be able to up and move. So it may be that some would like to go elsewhere, or maybe it's just that they really do enjoy the market that they've ended up in. The great thing about the state of Arizona and the Phoenix market that I have witnessed, I grew up down in Tucson, but have been up here since 2001, is that this is a very welcoming place. We are a bunch of transplants. I mean, how many people here were born and raised in Arizona compared to how many people are from somewhere else? Right. I mean, that's a pretty typical thing in any one of these settings, in Arizona. So we are a collection of transplants, and because of that, I've always found that this is a place that is easier to maybe make your mark if you want to, if you're somebody who's motivated to get involved in the community, if you're motivated to kind of stake your flag here. It's not a place where you have to be, come from the right side of town or be born of the right family or have the right background. It's a place where if you really want to, you can get involved and people want to welcome you into it. So I think just that mindset is something that is helpful. That's pretty broad though. Obviously I think the state can and should be doing more things to help make veterans make that transition and build awareness about the skills that they do provide. Yeah,
that's wonderful. Because you have this talent, everything you can do, programs like this are phenomenal because you keep that talent local. I mean, you keep them here. So final question, we all have had associations with veteran support organizations. In my experience, post-service is one of the things that's inviolate is I want to work with folks who are focused in on those VSOs and how we can give back to veterans and facilitate transition. How in Arizona is that working? Programs like this, in your experience, do you use those VSOs to find talent? Do you use those VSOs as kind of a bridge to your organizations? Any thoughts? Mr. Robeson, you got any ideas on, things like the Wounded Warrior Project, which you're so generous for, within the wounded warrior population, in my personal experience, is I don't see any damaged goods. I see young men and women in wheelchairs. They're not damaged. They are dialed in.
We have a couple of handicapped people that they happen to be women, and they're not veterans. But we check with some of the groups when we're looking for people.
Good.
And get on the internet.
Yes, sir.
Have some success.
I've got one comment on this. You know, sometimes I see veterans portrayed as victims. Hey, you know, you got this kind of stigma that people are coming back, especially young veterans that served in Afghanistan and Iraq. And even on some of these TV shows, they'll joke about, well, hey, does this guy have PTSD or something? And I think it's really important that veterans, you know, stick their chest out and show pride and communicate the positive examples where they're in the community making a difference. Because with that potential negative stigma, people say all the right things. Hey, we love veterans, thank you for your service, but they don't act on it. And I think part of that is that they're worried that these young men and women who served are going to bring a lot of baggage. And I think that's just, you know, false. Obviously, they went through some really serious stuff, but the men and women that I served with have the tenacity and the capability to do great things in the civilian workforce, and we've seen it. We've got, you know, great examples sitting up here today. So I think it's really important to echo and shine a light on those success stories so that people say, hey, we want to go after that talent.
Guys?
Again, I'll go back to the SBA. Jim Pipper, who is the Veterans Outreach guy, he's a Air Force veteran. We call him Air Force Jim. Jim, are you here? Stand up, Jim. You're not going to find a more engaged SBA rep there. You give Jim Pipper your business card, people are going to start calling you. So my biggest proponent of veterans and veteran-owned businesses is a local SBA office here too. But I will comment on what you said too. We have this thing called service or serve us. And a lot of people who haven't experienced the military experience want to, hey, serve us. Veterans are all about service. So I'm part of the Tuskegee Airmen here, and we have a program called ACE, where we take young men and women up to teach them about military service, to promote the heritage of the Tuskegee Airmen. Just a couple weeks ago, we took up some kids out of Sky Harbor on a tanker. You cannot aspire to be something you know nothing about. So we want to make sure people get a chance to have that experience of what service is, and it would change them for life.
Yep, that's wonderful. Jason, any final thoughts?
I think what's also important is to look at it from the other direction as well, though. It's not just necessarily what civilians and the civilian community can do for veterans when they're coming out. I think it's also important for the military to do outreach into the community that they're in to help bridge that gap. Because I do think, to your point, that sometimes on the, you know, my experience on living on base was it is a little bit of a bubble. And so if you're able to from the military side, do that outreach, you know, bring people, make opportunities for people that, whether it's school kids or whether it's business professionals, to be able to come onto the base or onto the ship and see what life is really like for service members. I think that can also help with that education process.
You know, these great gentlemen right here are examples of what I think one of the key tenets of leadership, and it's about the lead, not necessarily the leader. It's about the lead, and you gentlemen are living those values not only in service but also in your post-service careers about bringing the right talent on board. It's you before me, and that's amazingly admirable. So thank you very much, folks. Please thank this incredible panel.